I'm Madison Hale, 32, and for years I was the invisible name at the end of every company email, the one my boss mocked between meetings and forgot existed once the laughter faded. I thought I'd spend another quarter nodding through his arrogance, until the morning everything changed. One inheritance, one signature, one move that turned the hunter into the hunted. By the time the boardroom fell silent, I wasn't just an employee anymore. I was the owner. And the man who built his empire on humiliation? He never saw me coming. The conference room always smelled like polished arrogance, leather chairs, bitter coffee, and a faint trace of victory cologne. The kind my boss, Richard Langston, wore religiously. Every quarterly meeting was his stage, every smirk a performance. He liked the sound of his own voice almost as much as he liked the power it carried. That morning, the glass walls shimmered with early sunlight, catching the city skyline like a trophy behind us. Everyone sat in their usual places, executives in sleek suits, assistants pretending to take notes, and me, tucked at the end of the table like a misplaced file. I could already feel it coming, the sting, the jab, the joke. Richard never missed a chance to remind me I was expendable. He leaned back, his Rolex catching the light, and with that familiar smug grin said, "Some employees build the company." He paused, waiting for the room to lean in. Others just cost money. Laughter erupted like clockwork. Even the ones who didn't find it funny forced a chuckle. You could see it in their eyes, the fear of not laughing loudly enough. I didn't smile. Not this time. I'd spent years in that same chair, nodding through his comments, letting his words roll over me because I needed the paycheck. But that was before my life changed in a way none of them could have imagined. As the laughter died down, I opened my folder. The sound of paper sliding across mahogany cut through the room like a blade. Richard's laughter stuttered. His eyes narrowed. "What's that, Madison?" My voice was calm, the kind of calm that comes when every piece of the plan has clicked into place. "It's the new ownership documentation," I said, pushing the folder toward him. "You might want to read it carefully." The rustle of shifting bodies followed. Heads turned. He frowned, flipping through the pages, his smirk faltering as he scanned the signatures and dates. The color drained from his face before he tried to compose himself again. "What is this supposed to be?" "Proof," I said, my tone steady. "I just bought 51% of the company's shares. Effective as of last night." The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was thick, charged. Even the air seemed to stop moving. Richard blinked once, twice, as if he was sure he'd misread the words. "That's impossible," he said, voice cracking for the first time since I'd known him. "Actually," I replied, leaning forward slightly, "it's not. My late grandfather's estate finalized this week. He left me more than I ever imagined, and I thought I'd make an investment in something familiar." Someone at the far end coughed to cover their shock. Another tried to whisper, but the words died under the weight of the moment. Richard looked around for backup, but the laughter that once buoyed him had vanished. The room wasn't his anymore, it was mine. I watched him grip the papers tighter, his knuckles whitening. He was calculating, I could see it, searching for a loophole, a way to regain the upper hand. But there wasn't one. I rose from my chair. Every movement deliberate, every second of silence mine to command. "Effective immediately," I said, meeting his gaze, "there will be a restructuring." He scoffed, still clinging to his pride. "You think money gives you authority?" "It gives me ownership," I answered. "And that includes your position." The air shifted. The board members who had once avoided my eyes were now watching closely, gauging which way the wind was turning. A few exchanged looks, quiet acknowledgments of power finding a new home. Richard stood, trying to tower over me the way he always had, but there was no intimidation left in him, only the echo of a man who'd spent too long believing he was untouchable. "You're making a mistake," he said through gritted teeth. "I'm correcting one," I replied. I turned to the rest of the room. "Starting today, this company will operate differently. Loyalty will be rewarded. Arrogance will not." One by one, the board members nodded. The same people who'd laughed minutes earlier were now standing to shake my hand. I didn't look back at Richard as I walked toward the door. I didn't need to. I could feel the shift, the way the room bent around new gravity. By the next morning, the company felt different. The same glass building that used to feel like a cage now felt like a chessboard, one I controlled. Yet, power doesn't settle quietly. It moves, whispers, tests its limits. The news had spread faster than I expected. By the time I stepped out of the elevator, conversations stopped mid-sentence. Eyes followed me, some wide with curiosity, others sharp with resentment. The same people who once avoided my gaze now scrambled to greet me. "Good morning, Miss Hale," the receptionist stammered, standing straighter than usual. "Morning," I said simply, walking past. No need for theatrics. Not yet. Inside my new office, the one that used to belong to Richard Langston, the scent of his cologne still lingered. It was the smell of a man who thought he could never be replaced. I opened the windows wide, letting the wind sweep through, clearing it away. I hadn't slept much. The night had been full of calls, lawyers confirming paperwork, shareholders congratulating me, and a few subtle threats from people who didn't like the idea of a woman holding the reins. I'd expected it. This industry respected power, but only when it looked familiar. I sat at the desk and pressed the intercom. "Julia, get me the financial reports for the last 2 quarters. And schedule a meeting with the department heads this afternoon." "Yes, Miss Hale." My tone was calm, but my thoughts weren't. Buying the company had been the easy part. Running it, shaping it into something that wasn't built on Richard's ego, that was the real challenge. Around noon, the department heads filled the boardroom. The tension was heavy, but no one dared show it. I stood at the front, no notes, no presentation slides, just my voice and the truth. "Let's be clear," I began. "The company has survived on illusion for too long. That ends today. Every division will be audited. Every project evaluated. If something doesn't add value, it's gone." A murmur rolled through the room. I caught the flicker of doubt in a few faces. Richard had built loyalty through fear. I planned to build it through results. And before anyone asks, I continued, "Yes, this includes the executive bonuses." That silenced them. I noticed subtle shifts, arms crossing, jaws tightening. They weren't ready for someone who didn't play by the old rules. When the meeting ended, most filed out without a word. But one stayed behind. Mark Daniels, head of operations. Sharp, clean-cut, always too confident. He shut the door and turned to me with a practiced smile. "Impressive speech, Madison. You handled yourself well yesterday." "Thanks," I said, though I didn't do it for applause. He chuckled softly. "Of course not. Still, you've shaken the foundation. Some people are nervous. Richard's allies, mainly." I leaned back against the table. "Then they should be. Loyalty built on convenience isn't loyalty." He watched me closely, weighing my words. "You know he's not done, right?" "Richard. He's making calls. Trying to rally the board against you." "I assumed he would," I said. "He's predictable." Mark hesitated before lowering his voice. "Be careful. He knows where the skeletons are buried." I met his gaze steadily. "Then I'll dig them up first." He smiled faintly, but there was something unreadable in his eyes. "Just remember, power shifts fast in this place. One wrong move, and the same people shaking your hand will be calling for your resignation. Then I'll make sure I don't give them a reason." He nodded and left, leaving behind a faint unease I couldn't shake. By late afternoon, my assistant brought in the financial reports. I skimmed through the pages, each number telling a story Richard had tried to hide. Overspending, fake projections, internal deals that never reached the books. He'd been bleeding the company slowly, disguising it with charm and manipulation. And now, all that dirt was mine to expose or bury. I closed the file and stared out at the city. Richard had underestimated me, but I wasn't naive enough to think money alone could protect me. I'd stepped into a battlefield that stretched beyond boardrooms. At 5, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. "Still getting used to my chair?" Richard's voice was smooth but cold. I didn't respond right away. Let him fill the silence. "I have to admit," he continued, "you surprised me. I didn't think you had the spine for it." "Maybe that's because you were too busy trying to break it," I said. He laughed once, low and bitter. "Enjoy your victory, Madison. But don't forget, you're sitting on top of the mess I built. You'll find out soon enough how deep it goes." "Then I'll clean it up," I replied. He paused, then his tone shifted, darker. You think this company is yours. It isn't. It never was. Your grandfather didn't build it from nothing, he took it. And you just inherited the guilt. The line went dead. For a moment, I just stood there, the city lights flickering across the window glass. His words lingered, heavy and deliberate. I reached for the old leather folder that had come with the estate paperwork. Inside were letters, stock certificates, and a few documents I hadn't read yet. One envelope stood out unmarked but sealed. I tore it open. Inside was a photograph of my grandfather shaking hands with Richard years ago, long before I'd even joined the company. On the back, written in fading ink, a deal must always have a cost. My chest tightened. There was more to this company than money or ownership. Something my grandfather had been involved in, something Richard clearly knew. I looked down at the photo again, realizing this takeover wasn't an ending, it was the opening move of something far bigger. And for the first time, I wondered if I'd inherited power or a trap. By sunrise, the sky hung low with gray clouds, and the city looked washed out, like the calm before something inevitable. I hadn't slept. The envelope, the photo, and Richard's words kept looping in my head. A deal must always have a cost. It wasn't just a warning. It was history repeating itself. When I arrived at the office, my assistant handed me a note that had been left at the front desk. No name, just 2 words, meet me. An address followed, Langston's private residence. For a moment, I considered ignoring it. But ignoring Richard had never worked. If I wanted to close this chapter, I needed to look him in the eye and finish it myself. I drove through the city's quiet streets until the skyline gave way to old brick and trees that looked too heavy for their roots. His house stood on a hill, modern glass, cold steel, all control and no warmth. He opened the door before I could knock. No smile, no words of false politeness. Just the same man who'd once enjoyed watching me flinch in meetings, only now his confidence was cracked. "Come in," he said flatly. The place was spotless, but lifeless. Papers scattered across the kitchen counter told me he'd been working or plotting. "I assume you've started digging," he said, motioning toward the living room. "You found the picture?" "I did," I replied. "You and my grandfather." "What was the deal?" He sat down, the weight of his past catching up to him. "Your grandfather didn't build the company. He took it from my father. They made a deal, one that ruined us. My father lost everything, and your grandfather offered him a position to keep the peace. He died a year later. I swore I'd take it back. So this was revenge," I said. "It was justice," he countered. "But when you showed up, it complicated things. You reminded me of him, same calm, same hunger to win. I wanted to destroy that before it destroyed me again." I stood silent for a moment, absorbing the truth that everything, his cruelty, his taunts, had been a twisted inheritance of his own. "I didn't steal this company," I said finally. "I earned it back. Maybe not the way you planned, but it's mine now." Richard exhaled slowly. "Then you should know the rest. There's an offshore account tied to your grandfather's shares. It's illegal, hidden money from the takeover. If that leaks, everything you own goes with it." I met his gaze. "And you're the only one who knows about it?" His smirk returned, faint but real. "Until now." I reached into my bag and pulled out a small voice recorder. The light blinked red. "Then I suppose I have your confession." He froze. For once, words failed him. "I'm not covering up his crimes," I said, voice steady. "I'll expose everything. The fake accounts, the buyouts, all of it. The company deserves a clean slate, not a legacy of theft." "You'll destroy it," he said sharply. "You'll destroy yourself." "Maybe," I said. "But at least it won't be built on lies." The room stayed silent for a long time. Outside, the wind pushed against the windows, carrying the kind of stillness that comes right before something breaks. Richard leaned forward, studying me as if trying to find weakness. But there wasn't any left. Finally, he said, "If you're going to do it right. Don't half-fix what's rotten." I nodded. "That's the plan." He looked away, jaw tightening. "Then I guess we're done here." I turned to leave, but his voice stopped me one last time. "You'll never escape your family's shadow, Madison. No one does." "Maybe not," I said over my shoulder. "But I can choose what to do with it." I walked out without looking back. That afternoon, the world watched as I stood before cameras in the company's press room. Every reporter, every shareholder waited for a statement that could either ruin or redeem me. I didn't hesitate. My grandfather built this company on ambition, I began, but also on mistakes that were hidden for decades. Those secrets end today. We will open every record, return every cent, and start again with transparency and accountability. Questions fired from every direction, but I didn't let them rattle me. The truth had already done what it needed to. By evening, the headline spread half called it brave, the other half called it reckless. But for the first time, no one called me weak. Richard resigned officially that same night. His statement was short, almost hollow. I hope she does what I couldn't. I stayed in the office long after everyone had gone, staring out at the skyline that had witnessed every betrayal and every victory. The city lights blinked like fading stars, and for the first time, I didn't feel small beneath them. There was loss in what I'd done, names would fall, profits would drop, but there was also freedom. The company would survive, not because of who owned it, but because it finally had nothing to hide. I placed the recorder on my desk, the red light still faintly glowing, and locked it in the drawer. The past could rest there. Outside, rain started to fall, washing the glass clean. The city, the company, even my conscience felt lighter. As I stepped into the elevator, I caught my reflection in the mirrored doors. I didn't see the woman who once sat silent at the end of the table. I saw someone who had taken every scar, every insult, every broken piece of her history, and turned it into control. When the doors opened on the ground floor, Julia was waiting. "The press wants a follow-up interview tomorrow," she said. "Tell them I'll think about it," I replied. "Right now, I just want air." I walked out into the rain. It soaked through my coat, cold but grounding. The streets shimmered under the city lights, and for once, everything felt still. The company had been rebuilt on truth. Richard was gone. My grandfather's shadow was gone with him. And for the first time in years, the future was mine to write. The game was over. And I had won.